The late 19th century was an era of relentless colonial expansion. European powers carved up the African continent with little regard for its inhabitants. In the Sudan, a unique political and religious movement had taken root. Muhammad Ahmad proclaimed himself the Mahdi, the prophesied redeemer of Islam. His followers, known as the Ansar or Mahdists, sought to purify their faith and resist foreign domination. In 1885, they captured Khartoum, a dramatic event that sent shockwaves through the British Empire. The death of General Charles Gordon during the siege became a symbol of imperial martyrdom. For over a decade, the Mahdist state, a vast and independent caliphate, ruled the Sudan. The Khalifa Abdullahi ibn Muhammad succeeded the Mahdi, continuing his predecessor's vision. But Britain, driven by strategic interests and a desire for revenge, planned its return. The reconquest of the Sudan was entrusted to the methodical and unflinching Sir Herbert Kitchener. Kitchener's approach was one of meticulous, technological advancement. He built a railway line south, across the desert, a lifeline for his army. Each sleeper laid was another step towards the heart of the Mahdist state. Gunboats, assembled on the Nile, provided mobile artillery and logistical support. The Anglo-Egyptian army was a modern fighting machine. It comprised British regulars, Egyptian soldiers, and Sudanese battalions. They were armed with the latest Lee Metford repeating rifles. Crucially, they possessed the devastating Maxim machine gun. In contrast, the Khalifa's army was a force from another era. Tens of thousands of warriors, fired by faith, gathered to defend their land. They carried broad-bladed spears, sharp swords, and a motley collection of older firearms. Their greatest weapon was their immense courage and willingness to die for their cause. By late August 1898, Kitchener's army had reached the outskirts of Omdurman. They established a fortified camp, a shallow crescent with its back to the Nile. The gunboats patrolled the river, their cannons aimed at the city. The Khalifa was aware of the invaders' position. He chose to meet them in open battle on the plains of Kareri. His plan was a massive, overwhelming frontal assault. On the morning of September 2nd, the Mahdist army emerged from the haze. It was a breathtaking and terrifying spectacle. Over 50,000 men advanced across the plain. Banners of myriad colors waved above the columns of warriors. The sound was a low roar, a combination of chants and the tramp of feet. Kitchener's troops waited with disciplined silence. The artillery opened fire first, at a range of nearly 2 miles. Shells burst among the advancing Mahdists, creating chaos. Then, the Maxim guns began their deadly chatter. The riflemen, firing in volleys, added to the storm of lead. The front ranks of the Mahdist charge were annihilated. Men fell not in ones or twos, but in entire swathes. Still, they came on, driven by a faith that transcended death. Few managed to get within a few hundred yards of the British line. The attack, so brave and so vast, had failed completely. A second Mahdist force, hidden by the terrain, attempted to flank the position. This maneuver threatened to unravel Kitchener's right wing. But the gunboats on the Nile adjusted their fire. Their shells rained down on the flanking force, breaking its momentum. The second attack faltered and then dissolved. With the initial threats neutralized, Kitchener ordered an advance. He intended to march into Omdurman and claim victory. To clear the path, he dispatched the 21st Lancers. Among them was a young Winston Churchill, then a journalist and officer. The Lancers spotted a small group of the enemy and prepared to charge. They believed it would be a simple matter of scattering a few stragglers. 400 horsemen galloped forward in a classic cavalry charge. But they were charging towards a trap. Hidden in a dry riverbed, a core, were nearly 2,000 Mahdist warriors. The Lancers plunged unexpectedly into this mass of men. Charge instantly devolved into a desperate, close-quarters melee. Lances proved too unwieldy in the crush. Men drew their pistols and sabers, fighting for their lives. Churchill himself shot several opponents with his Mauser pistol. For a few frantic minutes, the outcome was uncertain. The Lancers, through sheer momentum and desperation, cut their way through. They emerged on the other side, battered and bloodied. They had suffered heavy casualties but had survived. It was one of the last great cavalry charges in British military history. Meanwhile, the Khalifa held his elite Black Flag Division in reserve. He now committed them to a final, desperate attack. This force, his personal guard, advanced with disciplined resolve. But they too marched into the same wall of fire. The result was a foregone conclusion. The Black Flag Division was cut down, and with it, the last hope of the Mahdist army. The battle was over. The field was a scene of unimaginable carnage. The disparity in casualties was staggering. Kitchener's army suffered fewer than 50 killed. Mahdist losses were estimated at over 10,000 killed and many more wounded. The Anglo-Egyptian forces marched into Omdurman. The city itself was a sprawling, low-built metropolis of mud brick houses. The Khalifa Abdullahi managed to escape the city. He would be hunted down and killed the following year. Kitchener, in a symbolic act, held a memorial service for General Gordon. The service was held in the ruins of the governor's palace in Khartoum. The Mahdi's tomb, a prominent landmark, was shelled and destroyed. This act was controversial, seen by some as desecration. The Battle of Omdurman was the effective end of the Mahdist state. It secured British control over the Sudan for the next half-century. The new political arrangement was the Anglo-Egyptian condominium. In reality, Britain held the dominant power. The battle became a celebrated event in the annals of the British Empire. It was portrayed as a triumph of civilization over barbarism. The technological disparity was the key factor in the outcome. It was a clash between the industrial age and a pre-industrial society. The courage of the Mahdist warriors was never in doubt. But courage alone could not stop machine guns. The battle left a lasting and complex legacy in the Sudan. It is remembered as both a moment of national trauma and resistance. For the British Empire, it was a high-water mark of military confidence. The victory at Omdurman solidified Kitchener's reputation as a brilliant, if ruthless, commander d'Octet. The world was rapidly changing, and the battle was a brutal symptom of that change. The sun set on the battlefield, casting long shadows over the fallen. A new chapter in the history of the Sudan had begun, written in blood. The echoes of the Maxim guns would reverberate for generations. The desert wind blew across the silent plain. It was a victory that confirmed the power of an empire at its zenith. The cost of this triumph was etched into the memory of the land itself. The story of Omdurman became a cautionary tale of technology and faith. The River Nile continued its timeless journey to the sea. It had witnessed the rise and fall of empires before. The British soldiers cleaned their rifles with mechanical precision. For them, it was a job, executed with professional detachment. Wounded were tended to in makeshift field hospitals. The smell of antiseptic mixed with the dust of the desert. for the surviving Mahdists, it was the shattering of their world. Their invincibility, promised by faith, had been broken. They retreated into the city, carrying their wounded and their grief. The news of the victory would travel swiftly back to London. It would be celebrated with patriotic fervor in newspapers and music halls. The name Omdurman would become synonymous with imperial might. But on the ground, the reality was far from glorious. It was a brutal, one-sided affair, a demonstration of overwhelming force. Battle marked a technological and tactical turning point in warfare. It showcased the lethal efficiency of modern, disciplined armies. The age of massed, courageous charges was over. The future belonged to the machine gun and the artillery piece. The Khalifa state, built on charisma and faith, could not withstand this new reality. The British Empire had asserted its dominance in the most brutal way possible. The sun finally disappeared below the horizon. Darkness fell upon the plains of Kerreri. Silence was broken only by the cries of the wounded. A cool breeze began to blow across the desert. It offered little comfort to the defeated. The stars emerged, indifferent and ancient. They had watched over this land for millennia. The battle was but a fleeting moment in that long history. But for those who fought and died, it was everything. The river flowed on, carrying the secrets of the day downstream. The Imperial triumph was complete, its consequences yet to fully unfold.